The symposium was born in ancient Greek society in relation with the idea of politics. This is really important because the idea of symposium it means drink together. This is really important. But why the symposium? It is really important in relation with politics during the ancient Greek society. In fact, this is really interesting because during the evenings or during the days, the different type of aristocrats developed symposium to develop knowledge, to develop in this sense relationships between them. This is really important because we know that, for example, we have a lot of sources for Athens. The ancient Athens was born as an aristocracy and then became a tyranny. And in this sense, we know that when in the end of the 6th century BC, this type of reform of Clisthenes, developed a specific type of democracy. This is really interesting because with the birth of a democracy, we know that in this sense, it was developed a specific type of connection between people in relation with their sons. Therefore, not only the ideas between sons, not only the ideas between aristocrats, but the sons that were in this sense sons of the aristocrats and the part of the middle classes. Therefore, for example, with ideas of a different type of lands that were developed were considered in relationships, the idea therefore or different type of territories of Attica, the idea that these type of classes are considered between them try to develop a specific type of connection between these families of different type of classes. This is really important because therefore the idea of aristocrats entered in front of the idea, it was considered in front of the idea of the middle classes. The idea of symposium, in this sense, it was in connection with this, in relation with the idea, in this sense, of the politics. In fact, the symposium, in particular, it was specifically that specific type of activities to control the people or the mass of the people that depended, or better, that it was part of a citizenship. This is really important because, therefore, the important aristocrats or also the important citizens of Athens, in particular that citizens that in a lot of cases were aristocrats or in any case in a lot of cases had a lot of wealth and therefore they were, for example, aristocrats. Pericles in this sense it was an example. He had a lot of territories, a lot of lands outside the walls of Athens, and in fact he had a lot of slaves also. We know he organized a lot of symposiums, and in this sense he invited a lot of intellectuals, for example, philosophers, for example, poets, for example, people that develop literature, for example, also people who wrote comedies, tragedies. This is really interesting because if you know about this, if you understand this, we understand also that indirectly, on the one hand, the aristocrat or people or person who organized the symposium paid for the symposium itself, therefore pay for with his wealth the symposium. This is the first type of argument. In fact, the Athenian people, the Athenian citizens, consider it really important that people that paid for the symposium, paid for their cities, pay for their city, pay for their idea of community. On the one hand, therefore, the important person who paid for the symposium, therefore, he paid, therefore, he is a really important person, but he respects also the costumes of the city because in this sense he developed a specific type of connection with his costume, and he has a lot of wealth and he used his wealth for the community. This is really important. Therefore, he organized with his wealth the symposium. On the other hand, he invites also intellectuals, different type of intellectuals, to maintain the politics. And different type of aristocrats arrive in this symposium that brought friends and friends of friends. And in this sense, on the one hand, the idea of intellectuals, also the sophists, the idea of other people that arrive in this symposium, the idea of influences between these people try to connect a political message that had to influence the public opinion. This is really important because in this sense, in the ancient Greek society was born the calculus of consensus, the calculus of a consent. In this sense, in fact, as in the modern age, but in particular in the contemporary, the idea of the democracy in relation to the vote, the democracy in relation with the vote. In the ancient Greek society, also if we consider the polis, the city-state, it wasn't in that period, in the 5th century BC, in the 4th century BC, in the 6th century BC, the idea of the democracy of mass. But at the same time, there was a specific type of democracy that it was the direct democracy. It is true, there were slaves, women in Athens couldn't participate to the political thing, but at the same time, there was a specific type of idea between citizens, therefore that people who had the civic rights and the political rights that could vote. And this is really important because it was, in the ancient Athens, there was a direct democracy with that people who could vote, and that vote, for example, they vote in relation with the idea of that person or that people who could govern or who could develop orders to the soldiers. It was really interesting and really important. Pericles, for example, between his period in the 5th century BC, continued to be voted to maintain the power to govern, or better, to give the orders to the soldiers, to the idea of military thing. This is really interesting because, yeah, it is true. The idea of vote, it is in relation with the idea of influence of a mass of people who are in relation with the city. And it is really interesting. It is really important because the symposium had a specific type of impact in the influence into the city-state. The friends of the friends. And at the same time, indirectly, the main idea that I pay because I am an important person and I have a wealth. Therefore, you agree with this and you will support me or your friends also. But at the same time, and this is the critic, the main critic that Plato, for example, developed against Pericles and the others citizens, main citizens of Athens, that they organized the symposiums, they organized the parties in Athens to develop a specific type of influence that indirectly impact into the city, the political life, to develop a specific type of sophism between the political of Athens. Therefore, in other words, according to Plato, this idea of parties developed, in particular indirectly, but with direct activities, a specific type of message that some intellectuals, sophists, for example, had to develop to the mass. And therefore, there was a specific type of demagogy that these people would like to develop, wanted to develop. This is really interesting because, in other words, Plato indirectly would like to explain this. The main citizens of Athens explained directly that they developed wealth for the city-state, organizing the symposium, the parties. And you can see this. I can go to the parties. I was invited to that party. I appreciate this invite. But at the same time, indirectly, this type of idea, it was used to influence me, to support you, to vote you, or to influence the mass indirectly also with the opinions of the different type of intellectuals. And Plato, at the same time, explained this. Where is the main culture of Athens? What is the philosophy in front of this? Because if the main idea of philosophy became the idea of influence the mass, where is the main part of philosophy? Where can go the philosophy? Philosophy is influenced, is to influence the masses, is influenced masses, or is develop the truth to the masses. Because according to this argument of a idea of drink together, at the same time, in other words, the main argument is I would like to organize this party only to influence the masses, not to tell to the masses the truth. This is the main argument that Plato tried to develop in his philosophy. Tried to criticize the idea of parties. This is really interesting because indirectly, according to Plato, Pericles and other citizens of Athens wanted to change the mind of the citizens of Athens. I give you this because I want that you don't remind the main issue of Athens, the main issue of politics, the main issue of philosophy, the main issue of the truth. And this is why Plato used Socrates to criticize this basement, this issue. Because Socrates, it was that man that went to the parties to criticize the parties, to criticize not the parties better, the ideas of the parties. Because the party is good. Yeah, we can talk, we can drink together, but the main ideas of the parties is influenced, better influence to potentially give some wrong ideas to the people. The disclosure of these parties could develop a specific type of tragic, dangerous ideas to the people that in the end could develop specific type of behaviors that are not good for the city states, for the city state. And in this sense, Plato arrived also to criticize Alcibiades and the other aristocrats of his time. In fact, according and in this connection with the Symposium, with these parties, Plato understood that indirectly people arrived to vote, arrived to support that people that didn't understand or didn't know what about they talk. Alcibiades supporting the idea to go to Sicily, to conquer the Sicily in the Peloponnesian War, but he didn't know what Sicily it was, the geography of Sicily. He understood that Sicily, that it was dangerous to the Athenian citizens, went to Sicily, but at the same time, the citizens of Athens supported Alcibiades. Why? This is the main issue of Plato. Why? And at the same time, we lost our independence to give this to the Persians and to give this to the Spartans because we follow people as Alcibiades. Why? Why we have to follow? Why do we have to follow the demagogy? Why? This is the main issue. This is the main question of Plato that developed at the same time the idea of philosophy that Plato developed into the 5th century and in particular the 4th century BC when he wrote his dialogues. And in this sense, in the end, Plato, we can consider Plato as a pragmatic philosopher. Bye.